Today I have a few minimalist Valentine's decor dupes from Pottery Barn, so let's get started.
On the Pottery Barn website, I found this simple heart-framed art piece, which is perfect for my style. I don't really decorate for Valentine's Day, and this piece doesn't scream Valentine's to me. And we can make it for way less than $179. I had this old canvas piece that I made a few years ago, but never shared on my channel, and I've never used it anywhere, so it's time to get a makeover. First, I need to remove all of that thread that makes up the image. Next, I needed to create a blank canvas and covered the top with 2 layers of gesso. Obviously, if you have a blank canvas or frame to use, you wouldn't need to take these steps first. Alright, while the gesso is drying, I'm gonna mix up some paper mache. This is instant paper mache that you can buy from any craft store or on Amazon. I'll link it in my description box. But all you have to do is add some water and mix it up. I scooped out way too much for this project. You only need a really tiny amount. Once the gesso is dry, I pulled up the Pottery Barn image and sketched out the hearts on my canvas. I highly recommend sketching out any design you're making first, because you can always erase your mistakes or fix any areas that don't look quite right before adding on the paper mache. And you do not have to use paper mache to get this look. The Pottery Barn version is made out of resin. You could also use clay or anything that created a moldable 3D design on the canvas. Now we can add the paper mache. I used my spatula and scooped out thin lines of the mache and started adding it right over top of the lines that I drew. Then I used my fingers to shape and smooth it out. I kept wetting my fingers so the paper mache didn't stick to my hands while I was molding it. Once the paper mache was all added to the canvas, I set it aside to dry overnight. Then I'm taking the color Buttercream by Dixie Belle to paint the entire thing. The Pottery Barn version is bright white, but I wanted more of a warm off-white for mine, and I gave the canvas and paper mache 2 coats. Next, I want to add a frame to take this canvas to the next level and look more high-end, but also to look more like the inspiration. My husband bought me this mini table saw last month for my birthday, and I could not wait to use it. I'll link it in my description box if you're in the market for one as well. But I had these scrap trim pieces from a failed home project and decided to use them here. I just need to miter the corners to create a frame, and this little saw is perfect for a small job like that. Now, when you're cutting trim or molding like this that has a curved detail to it, you actually need to cut it upside down in order for the corners to meet up correctly. So I set my guide to 45-degree angle and cut down all of the sides to fit around my canvas. The height of the saw blade is adjustable, which I forgot about when making these cuts, so it didn't cut all the way through, but I was able to just bend the plastic and snap it right off, so it wasn't a big deal. I used hot glue to attach the frame pieces, but you could use something stronger if you choose. I cut the last trim piece a little bit too long and it wasn't sitting quite right, so I went back and cut a tiny bit off, and then the corner didn't line up as nicely as the rest of the frame, but that's okay. I took some spackle and filled in the gap. I painted the frame buttercream as well, although I do think it would look nice white for a little contrast. The Pottery Barn piece was all the same color, so I painted the frame, and that's it for this piece. I had all these materials on hand already, so this project didn't cost me anything compared to the $179 price tag of the original. found this beautiful handcrafted brass heart sculpture on the Pottery Barn site and thought it would be a fun challenge to see if I could create something similar. Now, I'm not going to use real brass for my piece, but instead I'm using wire and clay. This is 16 gauge wire, and again, I brought the image up on my phone so I could follow the same shape. I used about 60 inches of the wire and bent it until I was happy with how it was looking. This was a little difficult because the sculpture was made from one piece and molded into the two hearts. So I shaped one heart and then a second slightly larger while using my needle nose pliers to help shape it. Then I wrapped the end of the wire around the start of the hearts. Next, I got out my Craftsmart polymer clay. You can get this brand at Michael's, but any brand will work. I would actually suggest using a darker color clay, preferably black, but didn't think about that at first. I conditioned and warmed up the clay by rolling it out and folding it several times. This takes a little bit of time until the clay is workable, and then I rolled it out into a long snake and started to mold it around the wire. The more you work with the clay, the warmer it gets, which makes shaping it become a little bit difficult. You can put the piece in the fridge or freezer for a few minutes to stiffen the clay back up a little bit if it becomes too hard to work with. I should have done that because by the end the clay was so bendable that you could see a lot of dents and bumps in the piece from where I was holding it. But that's okay, it just has a real handmade look, which is what I was going for. Once the clay was wrapped around the wire, I did my best to smooth it out and hide any seams, and then I put it into the oven at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. Then you want to turn the oven off and leave the piece inside to slowly cool down. I left it in the oven overnight since it was later in the day anyways. Here's how it looks the next day, and now I'm going to spray paint it black. But if you use black clay, this step wouldn't be necessary. Now, to make it look like brass, I'm taking my Rub and Buff in the color Gold Leaf. This is such a cool and unique product, and a little bit goes such a long way, but it does dry down pretty quickly. So I found it was easier to squeeze the tube and dab my brush into the tube rather than put some out on my work surface. You want to make sure you really buff and work the wax into the surface of your project. I used 2 different makeup brushes because they have soft bristles but are still firm. So I used one to apply the product and one to really buff it out. I ended up adding 2.5 layers of the Rub and Buff on top. I had wanted to use 2 different gold colors, but unfortunately the European gold one that I ordered didn't come in time for this video. But I plan on using this technique on my kitchen makeover and want to use the 2 colors on my drawer pulls and sink faucet. Those videos will be coming up soon. For the base of my sculpture, I had these Dollar Tree foam dice and glued 2 of them together and then painted them black. Now, to attach the sculpture on top, I simply used hot glue. A stronger adhesive would probably be better, but this worked well for me, and that's it for this one. Again, I had all these supplies already on hand, and the Pottery Barn version cost $129. I think this turned out pretty darn good, but what do you think? Would you attempt to make a sculptural piece like this?
I've teamed up with a few friends for today's Valentine's decor video, so after you're done watching, check out the playlist in my description box to see what everyone else has to share.
Next up is an easy project. I just love these fuzzy little heart-shaped pillows, and throw pillows are an easy way to add a touch of the holiday without going overboard. I took a trip to Joann Fabrics to see what I could find for the pillows. They have tons of options to choose from. This terry cloth would be nice if you don't want a high pile fabric. Or you could go for a more velvety option with this short pile fur. And right as I was about to settle on that one, there it was. Look at all those beautiful textures and furs. That's the one. It's a faux shearling and looks pretty darn close to the Pottery Barn version. Isn't it stunning? And I love how the shearling is only on one side. While I was waiting for the girl to cut the fabric, there was a basket of this E6000 fabric fusion glue. I've never seen this before, but I love E6000 and thought we should give it a try. Now, to make the pillow, I grabbed a Dollar Tree heart-shaped sign to use as a template, but I wanted the pillow to be a little bit bigger than the sign. So I used my fabric roller and marked out an additional 2 inches and then drew a line and cut out my heart. Next, I pinned the heart to another section of the fabric to make sure I cut them both the same size. So I didn't think the V in the middle of the heart was quite deep enough. I thought by the time I turned the pillow inside out, you wouldn't be able to tell it's a heart, so I cut the V a little bit deeper. But I think if I had left it, it would have looked a little bit more like the Pottery Barn one. Now we can use the fabric glue to attach the 2 sides. The instructions say to add the glue to both sides and then join them together. So I added a line of glue about 1/4 inch in from the edge on both hearts. You want to make sure you leave a section with no glue to turn it inside out later. I forgot about that part at first and had to wipe some of that glue off. Then you want to set it aside to dry for at least 8 hours. Let me tell you, I was pleasantly surprised at how strong this glue was when I tried to pull it apart the next day. Well, maybe I shouldn't say I was surprised because E6000 is a wonderful adhesive. I highly recommend this product if you need to attach fabric and don't have a sewing machine. Next, you want to turn the pillow right side out and then fill it with stuffing. I use polyfill, and you can make it as full as you want. Just make sure you stuff it against all of the seams really well. Then you just need to seal up the opening. I folded the edges in a bit and used my hot glue to close it up. Now, because of the way this fabric is with the high pile and how I glued it rather than sewed it, the seams are not as fluffy. The glue was on top of that pile, so it just pulled at it when I flipped it inside out, but that's it for this pillow. However, I also wanted to show you that you can make this using Dollar Tree materials as well. I went to Dollar Tree looking for the fluffy white car towels, and of course my store didn't have any. I only had one at home, which wasn't enough for this project, but I actually think they stopped selling the white car towels and upgraded to these ShamWow looking ones. They probably work better on cars, but sad for us crafters. Anyways, I looked around and saw these fluffy white mop pads, so I grabbed 4 of them. I thought I could glue 2 together and then cut it out in the heart shape. Let me tell you, this stuff made an absolute mess. There were white strings all over me, all over the place after I cut it out, but I carried on and glued the 2 hearts together. This time I glued the back sides together because I figured these were so fluffy that they would hide the seam. But once the glue was dry and I started to stuff the little pillow, you could see the gaps between the fluffy sections. There was a hole at the top and a big gap where I had glued those 2 mop pads together. Now, I don't give up on projects easily, but I figured I already had one pillow and didn't need this one. But you could always use something else from the Dollar Tree, like their bathroom hand towels or bath mats, to get a similar look. So the Pottery Barn heart pillow cost about $50. My version cost $15 for the fabric and the glue. Well, that's all for today, guys. To keep watching, check out this video right here, and I'll see you next week.